will never forget that night, when I found out my own father had betrayed me, joining the very people who wanted to destroy my clan. He was the one person I trusted the most. And yet he became part of the enemy. But just when I thought everything was lost, an unexpected person showed up, my student Patrick. He risked being cast out by his own clan to tell me the truth. In that moment, I knew the real battle was just beginning. Chapter 39. Greta stood next to her car as she dug in her purse for her keys. I have to clean this out, she thought out loud while she blindly felt around for the cold metal to hit her fingertips. Aha, she said again to herself as she felt the tips of her fingers close over the required items. Miss Classen, not expecting anyone to be around her. Greta was prepared for another voice, and as it startled her, she dropped the keys, losing it once more in the vastness of her purse. She spun around as she started digging again for her keys. Patrick, school has been cancelled for the rest of the month. Surprised to see him there, she had figured that although some students, including Patrick, may have been worried about her being trapped by Carolyn, she figured most would be quite happy that school had been cancelled until the board could let the wind die down around the fact that the head of their school had been a deranged lichen. I know, Miss Classen, Patrick said. He shifted from one foot to another. Greta stopped looking for her keys as she saw the familiar movement. Patrick was behaving the way he had in Prague just before he spilt the beans on lichens. What is it, Patrick? Mr. Winslow is in trouble. Greta smiled at the young man's worry. You don't need to worry, Patrick. Alexander is just fine. He's a rather capable lichen. Normally I would agree. I've heard the rumors that surround Mr. Winslow, and since Ivy lived with him, I've come to know that those rumors are completely true, if not understated. But I know Archie's in trouble. Archie's facing something that he isn't expecting. Greta sighed lightly. Patrick, you need to skip to the end of what you're trying to tell me. Once I tell you what I know, you're not going to be able to go back to my clan. Remember Prague? Greta told him. I took care of everything then, and you'll take care of it now. But just like in Prague, if you don't tell me something, I can't help you out. And if what you say is true about not being able to go back to your clan, you'll take care of that. Now what is it that you have to tell me about Alexander? Patrick shoved his hands into the pockets of his jeans. My dad was helping Carolyn in. What? Well, after Prague, he was part of our kidnappings, but he joined Carol in N to ruin Alexander and you. And now he and dozens of lichens from our clan are setting a trap for Mr. Winslow, and the bait is Carol in N. Patrick was on a roll, and he couldn't stop. I'm pretty sure the trap is working because Dad left last night with about 50 lichens. They're going after Alexander. You need to warn him. Patrick, she's not your leader anymore, Ivan said, walking into the conversation and interrupting it without knowing the subject. He was pretty sure the boy wouldn't harm Greta, but he still didn't take kindly that a male from a different clan was near his leader's mate. Patrick immediately took 3 steps back. He turned to Ivan. I'm not going to harm Miss Classen. I just came to warn her about Mr. Winslow. Off young lichen. Her name's now Mrs. Winslow. And secondly, if you want to talk to her you can come to her clan. I didn't think you or Mr. Winslow's other clan members would take to kindly with me coming onto the property with the information I have. Information. Greta stepped in between the 2 lichens. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Don't overreact when I tell you this. I don't overreact. Every reaction I have is perfect for the situation I find myself in. Much like this one. Now tell me what information Patrick has that bars him from coming to the manor to talk to you about it. Apparently, his dad has joined forces with Carol in N and together they have set a trap up for him. What? Ivan would have sprung at Patrick and attacked him to demand more information. But he found Greta standing in his way. It's Greta. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nogan, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Only Alex gets to call me Margaret. And you're not attacking Patrick. Achia's going to go back to the manor. And I'm going to go get Alex. Ivan took the time to let out a small laugh. Greta, none of that is going to happen. Yes, it is. Patrick, go get in the car. Pointing to the SUV where Alexander's men were waiting. Miss Classen. I mean, Mrs. Waslow. They are not going to let me get into the car on my own. I'm not part of your clan anymore. Ivan agreed with Patrick. This is part of Lycan culture. Greta, Achia's not part of this clan. Greta turned a glare on Ivan. Well, you're going to make an exception. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Patrick has just come to us that his clan is going to attack your leader. I highly doubt he'll be welcomed back in his clan with open arms. So we're taking him. As for getting Alex, yes. Looking for clarification on her last word. Thank you for agreeing, Greta said, purposely misinterpreting his meaning. She turned to the car where the second Lycan had gotten out. You will take Patrick back to the clan. Fine, Ivan said, inserting himself into the situation that he knew was going to happen. But he at least wanted control of the situation. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Take Patrick back. He'll be put into the basement till I come back with Alex. And he'll handle him when we come back. He turned to Patrick and Greta. If either of you have a problem with the arrangement, Patrick can go back to his own clan, and he'll bring you back by force if necessary. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Patrick answered for both of them. He headed for the car where the Lycan held the back door open for him. Ivan looked at Greta and swept his hand over to the waiting car. You as well. Greta, forget it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm going with you. No, then I'm going alone. She held up her hand to stop him. And don't think you'll be able to scare me with that whole first thing because it won't work. So call the men you need, or think you'll need, and then we'll head out. For a moment, Ivan stood and thought through the current situation he was in. He had the physical force to make Greta do what he wanted, but then he would have to deal with Alexander when they got him back. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ivan was betting that dealing with Greta would definitely be the worst of the two. She would surely cause a ruckus at the manor if she was allowed to go with him. And there was a chance, slim, but still a chance that she could find her way off the manor property and go find Alexander on her own. That, of all the actions, was one that he couldn't allow Greta to make because Alexander wouldn't let Ivan live if that happened. You can come. He held up his hand immediately to stop her reaction. However, and this is unconditional, you must listen to any order I give you immediately and without question. Do you understand? Again he held up his hand to stop her. Just to warn you, I will have enough men to restrain you to do what I tell you. If you're thinking of just pulling another card on me to get your way. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Greta said sweetly, I would always do what you told me. I certainly can't if you're distracted while we go get Alexander. I'm a Lycan now, so you'll follow Lycan law like all the other Lycans. Ivan finished for her. She shook her head with a slight smile. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I was referring to the number of years I'm going to now live, and I really don't feel like living those years without my mate. So yes, once we are there, I will listen to you. But we need to hurry. Alex might already be with Carol and N and in the midst of a trap. Ivan nodded his head, already thinking along the same lines as Greta. He pulled out his cell phone and quickly sent out a text to the members of the clan. He then called Lucas, the third of the clan, and filled him in on what Patrick had told them. that Patrick was coming to the clan, and that he, along with a dozen of their members and Greta, were going to go get Alexander back. Greta waited patiently by her car when Ivan started for her, still giving instructions to Lucas on the phone. She tossed him the keys, slipped into the passenger seat, and waited. On the outside, she looked as calm as Ivan, but she was betting that on the inside she was entirely more nervous than Ivan. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ivan's leader was in possible danger, but it was her mate that had been sent into a trap. We're going to get him, and he is going to be fine, Ivan told her as soon as he hung up the phone. He was reminded of the time that he was saying thing to Alexander when the roles had been reversed. It hadn't worked then, and he was betting it didn't work now, but he had no other words to say. Only actions counted at the moment, and Ivan was going to make sure that his actions brought Alexander back safely. Chapter 40. Greta tried to stop her leg that bounced from the worry that was building up in her body. 13 hours had passed since she had found out that Alexander was walking into a trap. 13 long, excruciating hours, as her mind had nothing better to do than to conjure up every possible scenario Alexander was in. And not a single scenario ended well. Are we there yet? Ivan looked at Greta through the rearview mirror. I know the weight is bothering you, Greta, but I can't make it go any faster. We are not going to attempt to seize the house in the middle of the day. They would see us coming, and we would have no chance. Our best bet is tonight. It's only 4 hours, and we won't even be waiting all that time. We will hit Greece in an hour, and then we have to get to the location. And you think Alex will be there? You don't think he found some other information about Carol and End went someplace else? No, Greta. If Carol and N was at the location, or if she had been and had left some other clue to her new whereabouts, Alex would have called me and let me know. He wouldn't leave his clan in the wind, and he certainly wouldn't have left without calling you. The car plunged into silence. Greta just passed the time staring out the window without seeing any of the scenery. After several minutes, she broke the silence again, this time asking the question that had been weighing on her mind since Patrick had told her what had happened. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Will you answer my next question truthfully? Ivan narrowed his brows. Immerse. Greta, we don't lie. As for your question, no, I don't think so. No, you don't think I can ask it. No, I don't think Alex is dead. Ivan clarified. He studied her in the mirror again. That was going to be your question. Right. You were going to ask me if I thought Alex was already dead. You really think he is not dead? Like I saw. Immerse. We don't lie. As for being dead, no, I don't think he is. First of all, he wouldn't dare die and leave you alone. Secondly, if William and Carol and N had already killed Alex, they would have made it known to us. That is not something they would have been able to keep a secret, even if they could. The other Lycans in the clan certainly wouldn't have been able to. Alex is a legend in the Lycan world, and if someone were to take him out, that news would spread all over the Lycan world. So, again, I'll tell you I don't think HES did. Greta noticed that her knee stopped bouncing at Ivan's assurance. She didn't think that words would have worked so well, but she was finding out that they had soothed some of her deeper concerns. Again the car descended into silence, and this time Greta didn't break it. She sat back in the seat and just let the time slowly sink around her. She thought time would never pass, but soon the car was slowing down. We're nearly there, Ivan announced, more for the benefit of the woman in the back. We will park the vehicles here and move in on foot. We can be quieter that way, and I don't want our presence to be detected unless there is no option. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Greta was a fan of Ivan's plan of walking in on foot would have been faster, but she changed her mind once she started walking. The exercise loosened up the muscles in her body that had only been increasing in tension, and it gave something for her body to do and her mind to focus on. With night falling, most humans would have found it difficult to keep up the fast pace Ivan had set, but with her like in sight, she had no problem dodging the fallen rays and small molehills around. Greta kept her eyes mostly glued to the ground and right in front of her to prevent her from tripping over a root or running into a branch. But every now and again, she would glance up to see if they were any closer to where Alexander was. At first there was nothing but black in front of her, but then she saw it. A house loomed on the horizon. The house that loomed in front of them was about half the size of Alexander's manor, which made it nearly a castle. It was on a hill, and near the base of the hill were a forest of trees that offered cover for the 24 male lichens and 1 female lichen. The moon, fortunately, was a new moon, giving no light to the night except for the blinking, twinkling stars in the sky. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A second in command easily led them easily hit the men, and Greta got to see firsthand the tactics lichens had picked up living over generations of time. They moved through the trees like shadows, hardly making any noise as they walked through the forest in their darkened clothes. Ivan called a halt to the party with just his hand. Then, speaking so quietly that Greta could hardly hear him even with her heightened lichen hearing, he gave orders. You 6. Shift. Pointing to the 6 he meant. You will scour the land and search for any lichens who may be on patrol. They might not be expecting us due to the fact they think their plan is secure. But someone might be on patrol, giving them one chance to change their fidelity to our clan. And if they don't accept it, take them out. Immediately the 6 shifted and jumped into the darkened woods, making no sounds as they svelte bodies blended in with the shifting darkness. Greta, without needing any orders from Ivan, leaned against a tree and waited. She wanted, desperately, to be doing something, but knew any action on her part would be foolish in the moment. She didn't know if there was a guard on the house, and if she were caught, the lichens would immediately know that Ada's men were there, for they never would have come alone. So again, Greta found herself waiting for action. After what seemed like hours, the wolves came back one by one to the awaiting men. 5 of them had found guards. None of them came back with any. With the new information, Ivan quickly worked through the plans in his head. Just as quickly, he settled on one that he thought would have the best outcome. All right. You 5. Take back. You 5. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You 5. The rest will go through the front. No noises. Take care of any lichen you find in the house. They are all to be considered deadly. If a large scuffle happens and our presence is detected, then we go in swinging. Joey, Danny, David, and Trent, you 4 will be on Greta. If something goes wrong, you take her out of there. You head back to the manor, and you keep her there. You're taking her in with us. Wouldn't it be safer to leave her out here? Greta straightened off the tree at that question. Her first thought was to veto that idea because she wanted to be front and center when it came to getting Alexander. But her logic overrode her desire. I think Trent is right. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ivan turned and studied Greta, trying to read what plan she was devising in her head. He couldn't come up with anything. What are you talking about? I thought you would be demanding to lead the battle. I would love to. Don't get me wrong, but you lichens are too protective of females. And me particularly because I happen to be your leader's mate and a rather new lichen. If I go in there with you, you'll be distracted. And with William's clan in there, you can't have any distractions. So we'll wait here. She grabbed Ivan's arm as he turned back to his men. Once she had his attention. But as soon as Alexander is safe, you will come get me. I don't want to wait while you all do whatever you do after a battle like this. I want to come in as soon as Alex is safe. I will make sure that happens. Ivan promised. Trent, David, You will stay outside with Greta. He held up his hand to stop Greta from contradicting him. No, Greta. I will not leave you alone without some form of protection, because then saving Alex will not be the first thing on my mind, because he would kill me for you with no one. So this is the way it will be. Fine. She agreed. She didn't want to argue any longer. She was too worried about what could be happening to Alexander in the house. Now though, despite the fact that it was Stuyven who gave the order, every lichen, save the 3 staying behind, shifted into their wolves and disappeared into the forest. Greta shifted to a different tree that offered her a better view of the house. She could see the dark, lean, muscular bodies of the wolves loping up the hill towards the house. The pack of wolves split into 3 as they surrounded the house. The night was deathly still. Even with her lichen hearing tuned as finely as it could be, Greta could hear nothing. All of a sudden, she realized that she could hear nothing. No bugs, no critters, no nightlife. They were in a forest. Even at night, the forest had life that made noise, especially noises that could have been picked up by lichen hearing. Animals hunting, bugs crawling around, nocturnal birds roaming the sky. But there was no sound. Suddenly, Greta ran from the tree she was hiding behind. She bolted for the hill. She shouted as loud as she could. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It's a trap. Get away from the house. Get away. It's a trap. Despite Trent and David trying to stop her, Greta managed to get halfway up the hill before the house in front of them exploded. The force of the explosion sent Greta flying backwards and against Trent's body. The lichen immediately circled his arms around Greta, falling to the ground on his side to take the force of the blow, and then rolled over to cover her from the flying debris that made it to them. Greta moaned under Trent as she tried to get the ringing out of her ears. She pushed at the man's body whose weight pinned her to the ground. After a few seconds, Trent pushed himself off her. With the new freedom, Greta rolled over and got to her knees. She stared at the fireball that had once been the house. The whole place, or what was left of it after the explosion, was engulfed in flames. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Greta whispered. Had he heard her warning? Had any of them? Chapter 41. They were all dead. They were all dead. The thought floated through Greta's numb mind. She had gotten them all killed. She was shaking as the thought invaded all other thoughts. They were all dead. Greta was shaking violently, so violently she could feel her head bobbing from front to back uncontrollably. Greta. The voice was shouting loudly next to her, but she didn't seem to register it. Greta. The shaking continued, until Greta realized that it was Trent who was attempting to get her out of her stupor. Trent. We have to go, Trent ordered. He tried to be gentle, but there was no real way for someone to pick a nearly boneless person from the ground without causing some pain. He took hold of Greta's arm and pulled her from the ground. We have to go. Go, Greta repeated. She forced her knees to support herself and finally tugged her arm out of Trent's grasp. I can walk on my own. We need to go. Trent nodded his head. We better hurry. Greta couldn't have agreed more. Yes, let's hurry. Perhaps some of them are only hurt. She started up the hill, wanting to get closer to the burning building. Perhaps a warning had been heard. Perhaps one of the lichens had heard her and moved back before the blast. No, Trent said, grabbing hold of Greta's arm and pulling her back to the safety of the forest perimeter. We are not going up to that house. We are heading back to the manor. It is much too dangerous for you to be here now. Greta pulled away from Trent. I am not leaving there. Neither are you. Someone could still be alive. We have to go up there. Trent moved to stand in front of Greta, stopping her from moving as he placed his hands on her shoulders. Greta, you're not going up there. The only place you're going is back to the manor, where I know you'll be safe. Trent, there could be someone up there. Oh, he said, interrupting her. There is someone up there. Think about it. Someone was watching that building. They figured we would come, and they were waiting. But the only way they would know when to bloating is if they were watching and saw us go in there. Then we go up there. Pointing to the highest point where anyone who wanted to watch the house would have to be standing to see it. We are going up there. Because that's where Alex is. Greta, it's where he is, she reiterated. William would have wanted Alex to see his clan die. There is no way he would have already killed Alex. So we go up there, and I say it's too dangerous. Greta put her hand on her hip. Listen, Trent, you can take me back to the clan. She held up her finger to stop him from thinking she was listening to him. But I won't stay there. I will leave, only to come here to get Alex back. So either I can go with you or I will go on my own. What do you say? It's too dangerous. She shook her head. My mate is up there. I don't think he'll be able to go on without him. So I'll go with you. Immerse now, which gives me powers I didn't have before. I won't be a weak link for you. David placed a hand on Trent's shoulder. I agree with Greta. We don't have the time to bring her back. And it will be easier to keep her safe if she's with us. Well, get Alex. And then kill the others, David added. Greta sighed in relief. They were going to go get Alexander. Before we head up there, we need to check to see if anyone survived the blast. I've already explained that heading to that house is too dangerous. They could still be watching. I know. We can go around the back. No one will be able to see us there. We have to check. Greta said. It's what Alex would do. Yeah. But Alex wouldn't do it with you there with him. Trent mumbled. They were in an impossible situation. Neither he nor David by himself could take on William and his cohort to save Alexander. And neither man would be willing to leave Greta alone while the two of them went to save Alexander. Alex isn't here, Greta pointed out. Now let's go. We don't have a whole lot of time. You stay behind David, Trent said, deciding it would be best to take the rear. You do whatever we tell you. It's to keep you safe. I will, Greta promised. She didn't care what the two men wanted her to do. She would agree to anything if it meant getting a start on heading up to the house. Let's go, David, Trent said. The party of three moved nearly silently through the forest. They kept to the shadows, shifting with them as the fire played against the trees. They headed up the hill to the back of the house, staying back just far enough so the fire wouldn't singe them. Greta hissed in a breath as she caught sight of the dead bodies near the back of the house. They hadn't heard her warnings. She had been too late. Stay here, Trent said, pushing down on Greta's shoulders until she was kneeling down on the grass. Keep your head between your knees if you feel sick. Greta watched as Trent and David headed towards the men lying on the ground. They touched the men's necks, attempting to find any pulse. Neil's alive, David said. Barely, but alive. He pulled the younger Lycan over to Greta. The damaged Lycan moaned as David let him fall to the ground near Greta. I got him, Greta said. David pulled his shirt off over his head. Use this to stop most of the bleeding. Greta took the shirt and moved over to Neil. She felt a lump in her throat as she studied the bleeding man. But she pushed all that aside. She had to help Neil. She could fall apart later. She pressed the shirt against Neil's side where something had pierced it. Probably shrapnel from the house which Neil had pulled out. I'm sorry this hurts. Just stop as much of the bleeding as you can, Neil whispered. I keep losing blood, so I can't change and start healing. I'll do what I can. She held the shirt tight to Neil's side. 5 minutes later, she felt the body beneath her hands change into its Lycan form. She knew that it would take days to completely heal all the wounds that were caused by the blast. But she also knew that shifting would start the healing process, and that could only be good. She looked up, noticing that both Trent and David were gone. She assumed that they had gone around the house to check for anyone else still alive. She hoped that they would be more successful than they had been at the back of the house. Perhaps they had heard her on the other side of the house when she had warned them. One could always hope. How is Neil? David asked as he came back around the house, carrying one man thrown over his shoulder as he helped a second man in his Lycan form get to the back of the house. A tear shifted. Who do you have? Dustin and Michael. Setting Dustin down as he let go of Michael's arm. Can you help Dustin? Yes, bleeding and knocked out. Greta moved over to Dustin. She looked up at Trent, who was coming over to them. Can I have your shirt? Trent. David's is already soaked in blood. Without asking why, Trent pulled off his shirt and tossed it over to Greta. How are Neil and Michael? Both are healing, David said. They should be fine to go with us. Good. I've already called and got Achilles' clan to come get our wounded that can't come with us. Greta looked up at the familiar voice. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You made it. She dropped the shirt she was holding to dust in her neck and ran over to Ivan. She threw her arms around Ivan's neck. I was so worried that you didn't hear me soon enough. Ivan groaned as Greta's hug threatened to suffocate him. He reached up and pulled her arms off him. I heard you. Greta, I should have figured it out sooner. How badly did you get hurt? Not too badly. I've already changed and healed as much as I dared. But we don't have much time. Take care of Dustin, Gretisk, and Ivan. Although the fire from the house offered light, Ivan stood between her and house, and therefore he was cast in so many shadows she could hardly tell where he was hurt. She had Dustin to worry about first. She moved back to him and took up the shirt she had borrowed from Trent. She pressed it against the wounds that were bleeding the most profusely. She glanced up at Ivan and Trent. How many survived? Michael, Dustin, Neil, Jeff, and myself. Ivan said. Jeff and Dustin will go back with Achilles' clan. The rest of us will go get Alex. Ivan turned to Greta. You, however, will not be going with us. You will also go to Achilles' manor. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Don't argue with me. The rest of us will get Alex. And, once we do, I'll make sure Alex is the one who comes to get you from Achilles' manor. But you're not coming with us. And that's final. Besides, I'd rather have you go with Dustin and Jeff. Greta sighed. She wanted to argue with Ivan, but she knew better than to try. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What he said made sense, and they would have a much better chance of saving Alexander if they didn't have to think about her safety. So when are you going to get him? As soon as Achilles' men show up. I hear my ears burning. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ivan said, crossing the clearing and extending his hand to the new lichen. Thanks for coming. I don't mind at all. So helped me. And now I'm repaying the favor. What do you need? Some men, weapons, and you to take Rita, and 2 of our wounded to your clan for safekeeping. It will be done. My men are down below. I'll take your dead and wounded to our clan. You can come get them once you get your leader back. Achilles said. Ivan nodded his head. He turned to Greta and motioned for her to come over to him. Greta, this is Achilles. He is an old friend of Alex. He will take you back to his clan for you to wait for us to come. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. This is Margaret Clausen. Achilles finished. I've heard all about the once human who captured the heart of the great Alexander was low. It's a pleasure to meet you in person. Miss Clausen, it's Mrs. was low. Ivan said. I should have figured that. Achilles said. He kissed the back of Greta's hand. Let's get you to safety. As well as the ones who are hurt. My men will take the dead to our clan as well. Without any more being said, men melted out of the darkness and moved about the house. A group of 12 or 2 moved over to Ivan and the rest of Alexander's clan who had survived the blast. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Careful for him, Greta said. as one of Achilles' men reached down to pick up Dustin. H.E.S. bleeding still. I haven't gotten it to stop yet. Hell, be careful, Achilles said. Now come with me. We should get back to my manor where the hurt can get medical attention. Greta nodded her head. How far is your manor from here? Only a short flight from here. Greta followed Achilles into the night. She glanced over her shoulder one last time. The darkened group of lichens were moving. They were going to go get Alexander. She would have to trust them. She would go with Achilles and hope that Alexander would come get her there. Chapter 42. Greta had every intention of staying awake until Alexander came to get her. But her body had different plans. As soon as Dustin and Jeff were taken to a room for their medical needs, Greta found that she wasn't needed anymore, and suddenly, as quick as it came, the adrenaline left her body. In its place came sleepiness. She had almost fallen flat on her face, and probably would have, if Achilles hadn't taken hold of her arm and gently led her to a different wing of the house and a room for her to sleep in. She had, just barely, managed to take a shower to wash off the blood, the smoke smell, and the entire night before falling into bed and immediately going to sleep. She slept like the dead, unaware that time was passing at the manor or at the place where Alexander was. She was unaware that while she slept, members from Alexander's clan in America were busy taking over William's clan in America, killing those that were still on William's side, and accepting others that pledged their loyalty to Alexander. And closer to her, both Alexander clan members and Achilles' clan members were making quick work of William and the army he had brought with him to seek his revenge he wanted. Greta didn't even move while she slept. Even the dreams left her alone, until the bed on her left sank down lightly as a heavier body than hers sat down on the mattress. So my little warrior sleeps, as she woke up with a smile on her face. You're here. Of course I am, Alexander said with small chuckle. You're here. Where else would I be? Are you a dream? Greta asked, unsure if she could believe her eyes. She would have been horribly disappointed to wake up only to find Alexander was there. No, darling. This isn't a dream. Are you a ghost? She asked next, poking her finger into Alexander's hard chest as if to find out the answer on her own. No, darling. I'm not a ghost. He leaned down so he was leaning over her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A ghost wouldn't be able to do this. He closed the little distance he had left between them and kissed Greta solidly on the lips. He waited for her to recognize him, or to fully wake up, but he didn't have to wait long. She opened up to him nearly immediately, deepening the kiss. Hey Alex, I told you to take a shower first, Achilles said, entering the room and breaking up the kiss without seeming at all embarrassed to have caught the two. Alexander slowly finished the kiss before pushing himself up to a sitting position and turning towards the door. Yes, my mate. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I don't have to wait. You're also covered in blood. Yours and others. I don't care much for that all over my bedding, and I bet Greta would appreciate it much more if you were clean. Greta sat up on the bed, knocking the blankets off her. Why do you have your blood on you? What happened? Were you hurt? Alexander shot a glare over at Achilles. Thanks for saying that. Now you have Greta all worried. He turned back to Greta. You don't have to worry about anything. I am perfectly fine, especially now that I'm with you. Greta didn't look convinced. She turned to Achilles. Is he a ghost? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Achilles asked with humor lining his word. No, Mum. He isn't a ghost. And if he had been, I highly doubt he would have let me see him. You, yes. But I think he would rather stay invisible to me because I like to throw a wrench into his plans. Like this one. He would rather stay with you. And in making him clean himself up first, he turned back to Alexander. You'll thank me later. As will Greta. Go shower and change. While you do that, they'll take Greta to the dining room to eat. And you can meet us there. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Alexander growled, showing his displeasure with just his words and his eyes flashing black. It's not up for debate. Alexander sighed. I guess it's just like old times. Old times, Greta said, glancing from Alexander to Achilles and then back again. You two know each other. Alexander nodded as he stood up from the bed and slipped his bloodied shirt off. Yeah, you could say that. Achilles is my older brother. What? Greta nearly shrieked. You have an older brother? Why haven't I ever heard of him? And why is he in Greece? Why are you the leader of your clan instead of Achilles? Wouldn't the older son? Alexander hushed Greta with a solid kiss to her lips. Once he felt her relax against him, he broke off the kiss and gave her a cocky grin. You talk a lot for such a little thing. As for all your questions, Achilles took over this clan before our father died. Once he died, I took over his clan. And everything else can wait until after you shower. Achilles said, Look at my bed. You've ruined the sheets and... He stopped as he studied Greta. Well, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You've managed to keep all that refuse off your mate. But none of that matters. Go shower. Greta, if you come with me, he'll bring you to our dining room and you can get something to eat. Greta scooted off the bed and crossed the floor to Achilles. I'll go with you, but I want to hear some stories about Alexander when he was a kid. Achilles kind of tight-mouthed about that time. I'm not tight-mouthed. Alexander disagreed. There is just nothing of consequence that happened before I met you. Greta blushed. She looked up at Achilles. Achilles just so sweet all the time. Yeah. Achilles a regular pile of sugar. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'll kill you later, after my shower. Disappearing into the bathroom. But then my second would be forcing you to shower before giving you access to your mate. Achilles shouted over his shoulder. Please. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My third could take out your second. Achilles only laughed as he guided Greta out of the bedroom. You're going to accept that insult? Greta asked good-naturedly as they moved down the few hallways that all seemed to be rather empty. Achilles shrugged. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. It doesn't matter how good his third is. It only matters that in any fight I would be able to take out him. Greta would have laughed at the statement, but looking up at Achilles shut the sight of his blackened out eyes. He was fighting his Lycan's side. It only took Greta a moment to know why. Just to the left of her, standing in the next hallway, was a lycanthrope in their true form. It took her a moment to recognize who the form belonged to. But with recognition came action. She stepped between Achilles and the Lycan. Achilles hissed when she moved away from him and into harm's way. But like Greta had managed to do for Achilles' younger brother, she simply ignored him and faced the Lycan. Patrick, what are you doing here? And why are you changed? Change back. This is not your manner. Where is Alex? Patrick demanded of Achilles. You should not be alone with his mate. Patrick greeted and demanded. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Come back to me now, Achilles ordered. Miss Clausen, Mrs. Winslow, where's Alex? Patrick asked again. Not listening to Greta, he studied the man in front of him who was still too close to Greta even though she had moved out of arm's reach of the man. Back away from her, before Achilles could respond. Quite angrily, in fact, to the boy in front of him for daring to order him. Achilles' own men came up around them, changing as soon as they detected the unfamiliar scent. Rolling her eyes at the impulsiveness of Lycans who much preferred the shoot, first ask questions, later approach. Greta grabbed hold of Patrick's arm and pulled him closer to her. effectively taking him out of harm's way. She glared at him as he stood against the wall. Stay right there. I'll deal with these men. But then I'm going to deal with you. All the Lycans, save for Greta and Patrick, turned to look at Achilles. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Without words, what he wanted them to do about the danger they supposed Greta was in, Achilles held up his hand to stop their advances. He didn't like the unknown Lycan. In his true form, so close to his brother's mate, that Greta, when she had moved Patrick away from his men, had put herself too close to the danger. If any of Achilles' men dared to attack the unknown Lycan, he had all the opportunity, and time, to kill Greta. No, Achilles wouldn't be risking Greta's life at the moment. He turned to her. Who is this Lycan? Greta, you will answer me now because I can't guarantee his survival if you make me wonder if danger you are in. She is not a danger, Greta said. She turned back to Patrick. Shift back now. Patrick melted back into his human side and shoved his hands into his pockets. You know, Mrs. Winslow, you're not my leader anymore. But I am. The deep voice surprised Patrick. And I did not bring you here to attempt to do my job once again. Patrick, I have told you time and again, it is my responsibility to protect Greta. Yes, Mr. Winslow, Patrick said almost immediately. But you went with her. He tried to keep accusation out of his voice as he faced Alexander. Alexander sighed heavily. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Under his breath, he moved to put himself in between Achilles' men and Patrick. When he heard the teenager shift to move beside him, he glanced over his shoulder. You will stay behind me until the danger is gone. What about Mrs. Winslow? Patrick asked, not even bothering this time to keep the accusation from his voice this time. Alexander's eyes flashed solid black. He turned his back to Achilles' men as he gave his complete attention to Patrick. You go too far, young one. Your accusation that I wouldn't keep my mate safe would normally have me beating you. However, since you are now one of my clan members, you are actually my responsibility, and I must keep you safe. So you will stay quiet until I ask you for your opinion. Do you understand? Patrick didn't answer. He knew his refusal was paramount to disobedience and that such an act could give Alexander a reason to reprimand him. However, he still couldn't listen to Alexander. As soon as Alexander had turned towards Patrick, Achilles had pulled Greta away from them and closer to him. Although Greta was technically Patrick's leader any longer, he couldn't seem to stop the protection he felt towards her. He needed to keep her safe, and currently she was safe because she was surrounded by Lycans he didn't know. Alexander knew exactly why Patrick hadn't answered his question, now that he was Patrick's actual leader instead of just the one supplying the protection. Alexander knew he needed to get Patrick to see him as his leader and protector. He wasn't going to be able to do that with Greta around. He turned to Achilles. Take your men and Greta to the dining room. No, she should stay, Patrick said, reacting quickly. Alexander picked up Patrick and pushed him against the wall. That is enough. Patrick, I have allowed your disrespect since the beginning. First because I wasn't actually your leader, and then because you were concerned about Greta, who was your leader. But it has changed now. I am your leader. Do you understand that? Despite the fact that Alexander was keeping him flat against the wall with his feet off the ground, Patrick nodded his head. I understand. Alexander dropped Patrick to the ground, letting him stand on his feet once again. When the young Lycan tried to move, Alexander pushed him back against the wall, keeping him pinned there with his hand on his shoulder. You will also start trying to protect Greta when she's with me. I understand, Patrick said, agreeing with his leader because he knew better than not to do that. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She was with that unknown Lycan without you, he whispered under his breath. With his impeccable hearing, Alexander had no problem hearing the soft words. He sighed inwardly and ran a hand through his hair. He shouldn't be frustrated with Patrick. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. The young teenager was only doing what any male in a clan would do, protecting their leader's mate at all costs. What Patrick didn't understand a more seasoned male like him would know was that Alexander would have never allowed Greta to leave his side and be accompanied by any lycan who may have been a danger to her. The lycan you're worried about is my brother Achilles. He would never harm Greta. You, on the other hand, are another story. You will stay by my side while we are here. And you won't push Achilles' buttons. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Alexander closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he flashed his eyes open. You will just call me Alex, like all the others in my clan. Now let's go get something to eat. Yes, Alex, Patrick said. He finally stepped away from the wall both Greta and Alexander had put him against. He followed Alexander to the dining room. Without trying, he immediately searched the room for Greta. His heart rate settled down to normal once he saw Greta, seated at a table, and she seemed to be enjoying herself instead of in any sort of danger. Alexander heard Patrick's heart rate decrease. He sighed heavily. I told you that you will stop trying to protect Greta when she is with me. Not to mention I told you she is not in danger from my brother. It's not like I acted on my concern for her. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Patrick said, his wisdom greater than his age. You'll learn soon enough that I'm your protectors as well as Greta's. Now get something to eat. Alexander ordered, pointing to the buffet table on the far side of the room. Then you will come back and eat at the head table with us. With Patrick following his orders, Alexander headed across the room to the head table where Greta was sitting with Achilles chit-chatting, as far as Alexander could tell. He pulled out the chair next to Greta where there was already a plate for him. I see Patrick is still in one piece, Greta said as Alexander stood next to her. For the last time, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I take care of those who are in my clan. Now that Patrick is part of my clan, he'll get the same protection as anyone else. Speaking about Patrick being part of your clan, how did you find out about that? Ivan filled me in on everything that happened in the States. He told me about Patrick and how he came to be part of the clan. I've decided to accept him, and now he's part of the Wurzlow clan. Greta looked around the room. She saw Patrick and a few of the other members from her clan, but she didn't see Ivan. Where is he, by the way? To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Is he okay? I know he was hurt in the blast, but Ivan is perfectly fine. Alexander was quick to say to avoid Greta from needlessly worrying. He's back at the clan. Cecilia had a question she needed to ask him. Oh, Achilles said with a bit of a laugh. So our sister has finally wised up to the fact that she shouldn't meddle with her mate's heart. Has she? I guess she realized that Ivan might not be there forever. Thinking that Ivan might have died certainly scare her. She doesn't want to lose her mate. Greta sighed and placed her hand in Alexander's. I can understand her sentiment exactly. I didn't want to lose you. Schnell, Alexander said, catching the sound of worry in Greta's voice and knowing that she was going to relive every moment of what could have happened. You're perfectly safe. Imperfectly safe. Except for the fact that I'm in Achilles' clan. But that will be remedied shortly. We're leaving. Greta asked, slightly surprised. So soon? But you just brought Patrick over here. Why would you do that? If you were just planning on leaving so quickly. Alexander laughed. I had no choice in bringing Patrick over. He was tearing apart my clan over his concern for you, and me. Not that Cecilia was any better. The two of them were conspiring on how to get here. So I sent Ivan back home and brought Patrick here, so that the two of us will have a clan to go back to. Patrick took a seat next to Alexander. Although you have a reputation, to my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, of being the most feared lichen in the world. My father and his men outnumbered you. And then, Miss Classen. Mrs. was low. Alexander immediately corrected. Right, Mrs. was low. You amended. She went with your men to get you. And I was afraid you hadn't taken enough men to face my father. He shrugged a shoulder. I guess that was useless. Yes, you should have known my reputation had been gotten honestly, Alexander said. But no worries. You're in my clan now and will be protected. I didn't think you'd accept me as your member, Patrick said truthfully. After what my father had done, Alexander shrugged. He could see the worry creasing Patrick's forehead and thought that the young lichen had too much concern for his short life. You have the makings of an excellent lichen. You have the loyalty that your father lacked. And I am not so blinded that I can't see that. Greta slipped her hand under the table and rested it lightly on Alexander's thigh. She could see that Alexander's words meant a lot to Patrick, and she wanted Alexander to know that she was grateful he was taking the time to speak with a young teenager. She smiled at him a bit shyly when he turned to look at her. His eyes sparkled with a look that she knew she was the only one to have been lucky enough to see. Suddenly Greta decided she wanted to be back at her clan with Alexander. Her appetite shifted to something different, and no longer was food on the menu. She let her eyes lighten with her want of Alexander and knew he caught the message well enough when his eyes darkened for a brief second before clearing back into his original color. We'll be leaving now, Alexander said, sliding his chair back from the table and then helping Greta from the chair. To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I imagine your plane is ready, Achilles said, envying his brother for the first time that he had found his mate. He could actually feel the love between them. Yes, he thought, Alexander was extremely lucky to have found Greta. He didn't begrudge his brother, but he was now wishing he had his own mate to sit beside and have silent conversations with using only their eyes. He had spent centuries on the earth without finding his mate, and chances are she had died during the human killings of his kind, dying during the Middle Ages where the prices on female lichen heads had nearly caused the extinction of his kind. Chance were, like so many other lichens in the world, he would never find his mate. Patrick, Alexander said, you can eat on the plane. We'll be leaving now. Understood, Patrick said, scraping his own chair against the floor as he moved away from the table. He grabbed the 2 rolls he had on his plate before moving to stand next to Alexander. Thank you for your help. To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Greta said, thanks also for letting me stay at your manor. It's a beautiful place. Anytime. Greta, Achilles said, standing up to see his brother and sister-in-law off. I'm assuming that Cecilia is truly asking Ivan for his name, that he'll be seeing you for a binding ceremony. That is, if you don't at house as fast as you had yours. They'll make sure you get the invite, Alexander said, slipping his hand around Greta's waist. He led her out of the manor to the helipad where the helicopter was waiting to take them to the airport. Alexander leaned down and kissed Greta fully on the lips as Patrick headed in front of them into the helicopter. Greta wrapped her arms around Alexander's waist and looked up into his eyes. So you want to get home now? Do you? As do you, Alexander said roughly, his lichen side coming out to color his words. To my agent extraordinaire, Marilyn Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'm fairly certain I didn't misinterpret the look in your eyes. She spoke even as the blush covered her cheeks. No, I don't think you did. I was hoping you could read my unspoken words. Alexander growled deep in his throat. If we didn't have Patrick with us, it'd show you exactly how easily I was able to read your words. With a laugh, Greta stepped on the helicopter. She waited for Alexander to come in and sit beside her before once more taking his hand. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She had always liked to be in physical contact with Alexander. Since she almost lost him, she found that she just cowed and keep her hands off him. She just needed to know that he was safe and with her, and that the whole thing was a dream. Reaching over with his free hand, Alexander wrapped his hand in Greta's hair and pulled her gently towards him. He kissed her forehead. Everything is all right now. I'm here and I'm certainly not leaving you again. And once we get back to the manor, they'll voice Patrikoff on any other lichen, and show you exactly what I mean by not leaving you. She smiled because she couldn't help herself. That sounds like a plan I could get behind. Then that's what we do. He leaned back in the seat. You might want to get all the rest you can now. Greta, because I can't get yours, you'll get much later. Chapter 43. Greta scooted up against the headboard and watched Alexander as he got dressed. So tell me what's happened in Greece. Alexander paused with his shirt in his hands. You already know what happened. William tried to take over my clan. That's here, and I am. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Just humor me. What happened when you found Carol in N? Alexander sighed and pulled his shirt over his head. I found Carol in N, and I knew immediately, at how easy it was, that she was the bait for a trap that was set for me. I offered her the choice of going on trial for the crime she committed, but she attacked me instead. It was quick work, but she was dead in less than a minute. Before I could leave the house, William and a dozen of his men came in and took me prisoner. How many did you kill? Not enough to stop them, but enough to show my reputation is more than just words, Alexander said. Then Patrick came to tell me about his dad, Greta said, telling Alexander what had happened stateside while he had been in Greece. Although I don't think William knew that was happening. And the house that blew up. William was watching the place, and having me watch it as well, just so I could see my clansman die. It was his fault for keeping me alive, Alexander said as he buttoned up his shirt. He should have killed me straight away. When Ivan and the rest of my men and Achilles' men came to the right house, the fight was actually quite short. And like I said, I'm here and William is not. Gretel after she slid off the bed. She moved up to Alexander and wrapped her arms around his waist and rested her head against his chest. You just aren't going to give me any details, are you? You don't need the details. You just need to know that I'm here, and I'm never going to leave you. I don't know. It sounds like a secret, and I don't think we're supposed to have secrets between us. Alexander bent down to kiss Greta but stopped suddenly just above her lips. He heightened his hearing even more than it was already tuned. Suddenly his eyes flashed a brilliant color, and he met Greta's eyes. Secrets? Greta, is there something you want to tell me? Me, she asked with a sly grin. What could I have to tell you? I was there. Margaret was low, Alexander said, trying to show anger in his voice but not quite managing it. How long have you known? Only a few days. I was going to tell you, but then the whole Greece thing happened. She looked up at Alexander. How do you know? I can hear the heartbeat, Alexander said. He dropped his head down to rest on Greta's stomach. It's a strong heartbeat for such a little thing. Greta smiled at Alexander and felt a small shiver climb up her back as his strong hand sat gently on her stomach. I was going to tell you. I wanted to find some clever way of doing it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I didn't think you would hear our baby's heartbeat before I could tell you. Alexander scooped Greta up in his arms and laid her on the bed. You should lay down. Darling, lay down. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You're being ridiculous. I feel fine. You're carrying our baby. You need to rest. Greta wrapped her arms around Alexander's neck, preventing him from standing up. If I'm going to rest, then so are you. I have a clan to run, Alexander said. attempting to unwarp Greta's arms from around his neck. "But in carrying your baby," Greta said, batting her eyelashes as she studied Alexander. Alexander laughed. "I'm starting to think that you found a way to wrap me around your finger." She kissed him lightly on the mouth. "I think I've been able to do that since the first time I met you. Now I'm not staying in bed for the duration of my pregnancy. I think we should go downstairs and share the news with our clan." Alexander kissed her more deeply and intensely. He didn't think that he would ever be able to catalogue all his good luck, but he knew that it all started and ended with the woman in his arms. Greta was his mate, and he was going to be able to spend the next several centuries with her by his side. And now they had a child coming. Let's go downstairs and share the news with our clan. And thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.